So it's time to put the blades in. Before I do that, I have to take off the protective goo that they had holding them together. That wasn't too bad. That cleaned off really nice. And then just follow the steps and put all the ones in the right place, put all the twos in the right place. Luckily I had an old video where I tracked that, because otherwise I would have been confused because I didn't make notes. Note to future people, make notes of where the bolts go, because you're going to need it. And then I used my 32nd and 64th ruler to try and get the blades right, and did okay. Here I was just trying to test things, and I found it wasn't quite right. Well, that was one of the things I was worried about with putting the blades back in. So I used one of these American steel rulers that had the 64ths on, and each blade was measured to the metal underneath, and they are at different lengths. Now, the one thing I wasn't sure on, so I didn't completely trust that as the only measurement I was going to do, is if this metal groove was milled exactly the same on both sides. Because if it isn't, that's not supposed to be a precision part. That's just basically supposed to hold it pretty close. The precision part is where you have the blade sticking out. So measuring against that edge isn't necessarily a definitive, it needs to go here. It's just it's a close enough thing. So side to side, I got each blade to basically within a 64th. However, they're not the same height. So I think one is like a 64th or more off. And the reason I know that is there is this measuring trick that people use online where you make a stick that has a flat side, you set your tables basically level, and you make marks. You make the starting mark and the ending mark. So if I set the starting mark, which is here, let's see, I might as well make that a little bit darker. If I set the starting mark there, and I set that, say for example, at the table. So the mark is right there where the table starts. And then I rotate this. Where that stops is how far it goes. So that's near this short mark, approximately. However, if I go to the other blade and do the exact same thing, start it there and move forward, it goes just past the tall mark. So from there to there. Well, that's enough that you're going to have scallops and chops and stuff in the wood. So now I get to figure out which blade is the low one and the high one, and then try and get them to match identically. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Not impossible, not something I can't do, just fun. And since that wasn't right, I'm going to go in and try and adjust it. So I loosened the one and tried to shove it out, and I got it better. Now it's to a 64th. So tighten it back up and then double check and make sure things are right. I think it's all good. And do this test again, and it still wasn't quite right, but the blades are sticking out about the same and it's slightly the other way. So here I'm checking with my micrometer, and it's within a thousandth or so, or within a 64th. Okay, so 2 originally when I first had it locked in was 12 64ths. 1 was 10 64ths. I tried to change it so 1 was now basically 12 64ths. I think it went very slightly over, but not much. I mean, 128th 64th, I really don't think that's going to matter. At that, this isn't metalwork, this is woodworking. The height, using my little eye gauging measurement toy, it went from 5 64ths, 2 is 3/32, 1 is now 13 1/28, which it's in between 7 and 6. That's close enough. I'm going to see what it does, and we'll go from there. I don't have any better measuring things. Jointing is not supposed to be the final finishing. Jointing is just supposed to get them basically the same. So as long as it's not scalloped or something and it's basically a smooth surface, which to some extent I think that's how fast I'm pushing through. If I'm pushing through too fast, it would scallop more. If I'm pushing too slow, it would tend to also do stuff. And I guess that also means I have to put the dust collection in. I'm going to try and see if the blue bin fits back in there. If yes, then we will play and we will see how this goes. And here I'm doing some final checks just to make sure, because I have to get the tables sorted out, meaning the tables have to be the right height in order for this to work and not just cut everything up. And now I'm putting the dust collector in, getting all the pieces ready, putting the fence back on, get everything ready to go. And then we're going to do a test. It ran a little bit. That was all good. Try 2x4. A little bit more. That worked really well. Do it again. There we go. Temperature was good. Well, it runs, and didn't do too horrible. That's fairly smooth. Yeah, there's some tear out in some spots, but some spots are really nice and smooth. It even did pretty good over the small knots. There's some tear out in other spots, but again, part of that may be from when I split this 2x4 in half on the bandsaw. But it took the paint off, and it made a decently smooth surface. Other than the tear out, which again, some of that might have been from the bandsaw, because I only ran 2 passes. That's pretty good. It does throw some chips. You can see there on here. But this part worked good. It basically kept it closed. Let's see how the blades work or look. No dings on that one. No dings on that one, which I would hope would not happen for just 2 passes of that much 2x4. If the blade dings that quick, you are doing something wrong. I did notice that for whatever reason, this side got a little warmer than here. So like this is at 79.4, 80 degrees. That's a 72, that's a 72. But the Babbitt is at like 77. And then that was not a long test. But that's a 65, that's a 73, that's a 77. That Babbitt above the shaft is 86. Again, all completely fine numbers. So yeah, I think it's... And the dust collection does friction fit up in the frame like before. I may have to come up with a better way to hold it there. Right now I just have a couple 2x4s and a screwdriver to hold it at the height. But otherwise it worked, I think. Well, let's find out. How well did the dust collector empty the little bin down here? Not very well. Okay, well, see, that's how many chips came out. That's way more chips than I would have expected. So that's kind of cool. I mean, it took that much off for 2 passes on the 2x4, so that might have been a pretty good cut. But it sucked all that side out, and it can go way up. So this tells me I definitely need to readjust this to make it such that the blower will suck all of them versus just that side. But that's fine. It kept it in. Considering how many chips were there, it captured most of them. So that's cool too. And they're long, skinny chips. They're fairly thin. So it was taking a nice thin cut off. So that at least did work. It didn't go everywhere. Considering all the more that came out, it captured a lot of it. And I'm not sure how much sucked it up, but I'm sure that it sucked up that section. So that does say I want to keep an eye on that, but that's easy enough. Like when you're done, open the door, take the hose, suck the inside out, and everything goes in the dust collector. The one thing I did notice, it does feel for the speed that I was running across, it does feel the vibration as it's cutting. Like you do feel it cutting, not in a bad way, but you can feel the buzz as the board goes across the blades. It's a smooth buzz, but you do feel the buzz. But which, not using a joiner a whole lot, I'm assuming that's normal. I don't know. Considering it only has 2 cutters, I'm pretty sure that's probably normal. But it didn't heat up. The dust collection, I mean, this is, again, minimal. That's easy enough to deal with. Most of it went down in there. It did not spray the dust all over everywhere else that I can see for that much cutting. Granted, again, it was not very much, but it didn't really spray chips all over. I think it's done. Surprisingly enough, I think it's actually done. The one thing I did do, the 2 blades are within a 64th or so of each other, height-wise. So I think that's all right. It's way better than it was when I first got it. That was like a 16th off on one of them. So a 64th in woodworking is basically 0 a lot of times. Not in metalworking, but woodworking, 64th is very, very small. So I think that's going to work. The one thing I do need to figure out is, which I'm not even sure where or how to install it. I may have to just get my eye gauging thing and figure out, okay, how far, if I want like an exact amount removed, I may have to get my eye gauging thing and set it up and say, okay, I'm going to take a 30-second off or whatever, and then just run it. Or I just leave it. This took an okay cut, I think. It was a very thin cut. For all the more joining I do, I could just leave it set up like this and it should work. The one thing I did notice, this side of the blade is a fraction, like a couple thousandths of an inch higher than that side. I tried to adjust this slightly because I think that's supposed to tilt things. But again, thousandths of an inch in woodworking is not really that big a deal. So I think we're fine. Unless if I run into things later where I'm doing some woodworking and I need to do something more precise, maybe I'll have to adjust this. But for now, I think it works. It seems to work. It turns on. It didn't blow up. It cuts nice. I'm going to call that a win. Could I run other crazy wood through to see what it did? Yeah, but I don't really have any of that. And I don't want to run crazy stuff through and just end up accidentally messing up the blades versus waiting till I actually need it. Then I have good blades installed for when I want to run something better later. But yeah, I'm happy. I am happy. It is working. Yay!